Hey everybody! Welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. This is episode number 143 of Warbird Tube, and tonight we are going to conclude our series of shows focusing on CAF's annual fundraiser, the 12 Planes of Christmas. This week, the mighty Ercoupe from the Great Plains Wing. But before we get started, please do us a favor. If you haven't already done so, please take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, also click on that bell icon and you'll get notifications of new episodes of Warbird Tube when they're posted. Now, the show is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about the CAF, our events, aircraft, local units, or how you can join the fun, visit our website at commemorativeairforce.org. Now, tonight you might have some questions, and if you do, just type those in the chat box and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. Joining me right now from the Omaha, Nebraska area is Bruce Monday. Bruce, glad to have you on the show tonight.
It's great to be here tonight and to talk about our newest project here in the Omaha and Council Bluffs, Iowa area.
All right. Well, we talked about it's the 12 Planes of Christmas, and we're going to raise some money for the Ercoupe. We're going to talk about the airplane. We'll talk about the wing, but what you see on the screen right now, that's the graphic from the Commemorative Air Force homepage. Go to commemorativeairforce.org, click on that graphic, and you can donate to the airplane while you're watching tonight, or any of the airplanes that are here on 12 Planes of Christmas. We'll talk more about the 12 planes a little bit later, but let's talk a little bit about Bruce. What's your background, and how'd you get involved in this project?
So I spent 29 years in the Air Force. I was a T-37 instructor pilot. Right there is the mighty T-37. The Air Force obviously used those in training, been replaced by the T-6, and had the opportunity to fly. There's me back in the day when I had some hair, much younger and much thinner, and the mighty Tweet there at Advanced Air Force Base. And the other trainer airplane I got the opportunity to fly was the T-38 Talon, and there's me flying the T-38s. And then I traded the smaller, faster-moving jets for the mighty RC-135 at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. And there's the RC right there. And I spent the majority of my career in the Air Force flying that thing around the world several times. Doing the good work that the RC-135 does. Flew out of, spent some time in Mildenhall, England, 4 years there. Spent 4 years in Japan flying that airplane, and had a great time and had a great career. Wouldn't change a thing from the RC-135. The good news is it's based here in Omaha, Nebraska, and Omaha's home. And Omaha and right across the river, we have the Great Plains Wing. And so got associated with that wing quite early in my life. When I was a kid, I remember watching Reg Urschler and his P-51 Mustang gunfighter, and became very inspired for that airplane and the history of the Air Force and history of World War II. I myself couldn't afford a P-51, so I built that Newport 28 right there. It's an Aerodrome Airplanes replica out of Holden, Missouri. It took me 8 years to build it, and I've been flying it now for 4 years. And the highlight of flying that airplane was out of the Air Force Museum 2 Octobers ago for their Dawn Patrol fly-in, and I'll be doing that again this October. It's great to fly out of the grassy area behind the museum in little airplanes that can do that. But full-scale Newport 28, and that's Quentin Roosevelt's airplane right there. That's wow. For a different time.
What's it like to fly the Newport replica?
It is. It's thrilling. I mean, flying a T-38 is like sitting in a Corvette, all buttoned up and doing your thing, and flying the Newport would be like flying like a cafe racer motorcycle. It's very visceral, very loud. Can be smoky. You can smell, you fly over the ground, you can smell the fields, the wheat or the feedlots, wherever you're flying over at the time. And it's very quirky. It's got a very high lift ratio wing. And so the winds and the crosswinds, it always tries to, mess with you every time you try to land it. So you always have to be on your toes with that airplane. You're flying it all the time.
Well, you mentioned that you built it yourself, so you're also a member of the Experimental Aircraft Association, a chapter.
Correct. Yeah. I'm the president of the Omaha Council Bluffs chapter here in eastern Nebraska, western Iowa. 150 members, very, very active group. I had to throw a plug in for that
Sure.
because I'm the president, and obviously kind of near your heart too, Steve, a little bit would be the Young Eagles program. We flew over 150 Young Eagles last year here in Omaha Council Bluffs, and hope to do better in 2024.
Excellent. Yeah. And what airplane are you flying there? Looks like an RV.
That is an RV-12, and the long story short about that airplane was we had kids from local high schools actually build this project in our mall facility, and then I was test flown by one of our members, and now it's kind of in a flying club where EA members and others can actually join the flying club. But its main duty right now, for me at least, is flying Young Eagles, and really, really like doing that in that airplane.
Well, you mentioned the mighty P-51, the airplane known as Gunfighter, probably one of the most famous Mustangs on the air show circuit, and was with the wing there at the Great Plains Wing, with you guys helping keep that airplane flying for many, many years.
Absolutely. The Gunfighter joined our units in about 1990, and it was kind of managed by General Reg Urschler. And he's infamous around here in these parts. Everyone knows about Reg Urschler and the P-51 Mustang. He found his replacement, a guy named Larry Lumpkin, and Larry continued. There's Larry right there working on the engine banks. And he continued flying Gunfighter here up until the present day. And so it's a very, very famous airplane. Like I said, everyone in the Omaha area knows about it, especially at Offutt Air Force Base. And it is definitely a showstopper. And it grabs everyone's attention when you hear that thing flying. It's an amazing, amazing aircraft, and we all love Gunfighter here in the Great Plains Wing.
And I understand it's getting a little engine work done these days?
Correct, yes. It's right now. We used to do the engine work here in Omaha, and we had a mechanic here, a guy named George Sarnecki, very, very famous mechanic here in town. And George just kind of timed out. He was getting a little older and said, you know what, I'm going to hang up my Merlin rebuilt skills. And so we had to find a new place for it. So it's actually in Detroit right now at Roush Engineering, getting engine work done, and hopefully be flying here very, very shortly.
Good, good. And the wing also has a very extensive museum.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Jim Freebert, our librarian, also has been doing a 2-year kind of redo restoration of the museum. It's jam-packed. It has over 2,500 artifacts. Over 1,500 pieces of media, mostly pertaining to World War II, but we have Korean War stuff, and we have stuff more vintage than that. And of course, all the models that the kids build for the museum, and some replica, not replica, some engines there. We have a radio from a B-17 and a Merlin in there too, an early Merlin in there too to show off. And so we're very, very proud of our museum. We're also very proud of its restoration here. It should be done very, very shortly.
Good. And where's the actual museum and hangar located?
Yeah, so we are located at the Council Bluffs Airport, just over the river in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Council Bluffs and Omaha are kind of twin cities there on the river, and nice facility, really nice airport there at Council Bluffs, 3 runways, and the facility is amazing. Partnership with the Council Bluffs Airport Authority, the city of Council Bluffs, they really, really are excited to have the CAF there. And they're excited for our future, especially with the future with more airplanes, which we're fixing to talk about with the Ercoupe here very shortly.
Yeah, and that brings us to a very interesting point. When I first saw the list of airplanes for the 12 planes of Christmas, I saw the Ercoupe, and being sort of a Warbird / vintage kind of person, interested in the older airplanes, Ercoupe and World War II didn't quite go together, but there actually is quite a bit of history with the Ercoupe serving the United States.
Actually correct, yes. So I was a little confused too at first, and when the opportunity came to rebuild this airplane, I paused for a moment. I had to go to Wikipedia to find out if it was actually involved in World War II, and sure enough, it was. The Army Air Corps actually took over three already built airplanes. 2 of them were aerial drones, and one was the YO-55, which is the one we're going to rebuild. And it was used for testing at March Air Force Base and in Riverside, California. And it was actually used with a black powder, pressed powder JATO bottle for figuring out how to do JATO takeoffs. And that JATO rocket was developed by Caltech. And there's the poor lieutenant right there, actually captain at the time, Captain Homer A. Bushi from the Army Air Corps. And he had to actually gradually increase the amount of powder they loaded in that thing. And they shot him off the ground a bunch of times to develop this concept of what we call, JATO rockets for aircraft.
It's amazing. Yeah. And that all started with the Ercoupe. I cannot imagine being the pilot on the first flight and triggering that mechanism to see what was going to happen.
Right. And so, and the question always comes up is why did they pick the Ercoupe? Why not something a little more sexier or a different airplane? And the readings that I've done and the research I've done on this is that most of the smaller airplanes were tail dragger airplanes. Right. And most of them were made out of fabric. And so the Ercoupe was unusual because it's tricycle configuration and was made of metal. So this was the ideal airplane for stability on the ground, with the JATO bottle being ignited on the ground and get in the air. And then also the metal fuselage helped with, withstand the force of that JATO bottle. And not only did they actually fire it off on the ground, they actually fired it off in flight too. And if you go to YouTube or any other sites here on the internet, there's actually videos they took of those airplanes, film at the time, of them launching the thing from the ground and actually hitting that bottle in flight to see what it would do to the airplane if it was controllable. So a pretty cool history there. The other two Ercoupes that they took on that we know of were actually codified as XPQ-13s, and these were going to be drones. And they were going to be drones for anything, cruise missiles, target practice, whatever the Army Air Corps needed for drones. They were going to use these Ercoupes, and they perform admirably. But there was a better drone called the Culver PQ-14, which was much more suited and designed for that purpose. So the Ercoupes weren't selected, and the Culver PQ-14 took over. And those Ercoupes were there at March, and then after their service was done, kind of a Nebraska story here, kind of near the Great Plains wing, is that they were moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is only about 50 miles away, and they were used in the Lincoln Field Mechanics School until about 1944, and then they were transferred to the Nebraska Civil Air Patrol in 1944, where they lived out the rest of their lives. And I tell you what, it would have been really, really neat if we could have found one of those airplanes, but unfortunately, we didn't find one of those airplanes. We found a close facsimile of the one we've got here. And so one of our members, who's a big modeler, he got a couple pictures offline of that pressed powder JATO bottle, and he made a little mock-up out of 2x4s and some tubing with the spark plug right there in the middle, how they launched that thing. And that is a scale mock-up of that actual JATO bottle, which was actually bolted on the bottom of the airplane in a spot where the engineers thought it could handle the load. And I was a little disappointed it didn't have roller skates or a coyote attached to it in some Acme Corporation, but nonetheless, it looks like it could have that coyote and roller skates with it, no problem. But anyway, he did a good job of that. And I get asked all the time, hey, Bruce, are you going to put the JATO bottle on the Ercoupe? And officially, we're not going to, but it'd be kind of fun, I think, to try it out maybe.
Maybe once.
Maybe once. But yeah, that's a cool model of it, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
And so, how do we find the airplane? That's another question I get asked. Yeah. And so I was called by a gentleman named Dallas Wilhelm, and he had the airplane in that hangar right there behind us in Hastings, Nebraska. It had been there since the 90s. And he got it. He may have flown it in. I think he may have. And then he took it all apart, took the paint off it, and it sat for 30, 40 years there in the hangar. So not necessarily a barn find, but as close as you can to a barn find. That's what that airplane is. And so he called me up as the EAA president, said, do you want a project? And I said, well, I can't take another one. We have too many. But I'll call Larry Lumpkin up at the CAF and see if they want it. And I was a member of the CAF at the time, too. I kind of figured they did, and did some quick research about its World War II history, and the answer was emphatically yes. So we ran down there. I think it was December 3rd last year. We've had it for about a year. And a bunch of trailers and a bunch of people, and we loaded it up, dust and mice and bugs and all, and got it on its way back to Council Bluffs there from Hastings, Nebraska. There are the wings. This model of Ercoupe would have had fabric-covered wings, but sometime in its life, someone put the modification, which was approved, to put metal wings on it, metal skin. So metal skin wings are there, and but we just couldn't resist peeling those things off to check for corrosion, and kind of glad we did. For an airplane this vintage, The corrosion wasn't bad, but there was still some corrosion. And so airplanes and corrosion don't usually mix very well. So we're going to be part of the restoration will be getting rid of all that corrosion. I can picture the wings there on the trailer heading back east. And then we got back to Omaha. It was extremely cold on Council Bluffs, extremely cold. And this is us kind of hustling up through the parking lot to the front part of our CAF hangar to put it to bed in its new home at the Great Plains Wing in Council Bluffs, Iowa. But happy new owners there. You can see us right there pushing it.
Very good.
Fantastic. There's our hangar. You can see in the back there's kind of one of the entrances to the museum. Of course, the giant poster in homage to Gunfighter, our favorite plane there in the CAF, and then all the smiling faces there of the new airplane. We are blessed actually to have master mechanics in our chapter, Jerry Mason and Jerry Morlock. And so those guys are A&Ps and A&P inspectors. And so they work on Gunfighter. And now their new project will be the Ercoupe. So it's nice to have, homegrown and organic mechanics inside the wing, which is just fantastic. What a blessing we have. All right, so one of the first things we tore apart was the engine. We were pretty lucky. This 1946 Ercoupe was upgraded for a C90 engine, Continental C90. So that gives us the 90 to 100 horsepower, 90 during kind of cruise, 100-ish kind of during takeoff settings. So it's going to be one of the more overpowered Ercoupes. You could call 100 horsepower overpowered, but we're kind of happy to have the engine. And that engine restore we talked about, George Sarnecki here at Central Cylinder. This engine's over at his shop right now, and Jerry will go over there with George and get that thing back into tip-top running order. New rings, new pistons if we need them, seat the valves, test run it, bench run it, basically overhaul the engine. So we'll have nearly a zero-time engine when the airplane's ready to go. But surprisingly enough, having not turned, probably for 30 years, the engine's nearly corrosion free. And so we're very, very happy about that. Replace a few of the parts, get it bench run, and then we'll have that engine ready to go. So the engine is really in really nice shape, we thought, for sitting for 30 years.
Sure. What engine was originally on the airplane? Do you know?
Yeah, so several models of the Ercoupe. Of interest, the Erco 310, which was the first prototype, Erco actually built their own engine. It was called the IL-116 engine. It was an inline 4 and produced about 65 horsepower. And they were going to go with that. And then Continental came out with their 0200 engine series, and they could put those on for half the cost. So Ercoupe went with the Continental engines, and so probably a much better product, although I don't know much about the IL-116, just its expense. And so Continental engines, and it ran from the 65 horsepower to the 75 horsepower, and then the C90 was one of the last engines they put on between 90 and 100 horsepower. So as the airplane got a little bit older, they started putting a little bit bigger engines in it as best they could.
Well, you mentioned that, it was basically in a hangar, and you kind of called it, a pseudo barn find, but really being in a hangar and just sort of neglected for all those years. You mentioned, lots of dirt and dust, and I'm sure there were some animals that that used it as home for a while. So there's probably a lot of cleaning that you had to do to get it even to this condition that we're looking at.
The dust was amazing, and we had to have some smaller chapter members go back into the tail cone because I was getting stuck back in there with the vacuum cleaner to clean that out. And the fuselage is small enough where we can manipulate it up and down, so we kind of give it a good shake up and down and got all the debris and all the old steel out of it. There was some steel in there, steel fittings that were rusted, and they're all being restored and being replaced into the airplane. There's a good picture of the Ercoupe right there. When you stand next to one, if you've ever seen one before up close, it's actually kind of a beautiful airplane because there's a lot of compound curves in this thing. It must have been really a handful to manufacture these things because all the curves. A lot of the home built airplanes you have today, they kind of minimize compound curves with flat panels and just simple curves. This one is just curved all over the place. So it's actually kind of a beautiful little airplane there, sitting on its wheels in the hangar with all that metal work.
Yeah. Well, coming out of the 30s and the Art Deco and the very ornate buildings that were built at that time, the aircraft at that time, some of them reflected that same sort of design.
Absolutely, and that's a good shot there. One of the cool features about the airplane is that the windows actually slide up into the canopy bow, and the windows themselves and window frames are curved, and so you can actually slide the windows down in flight and kind of have a target top convertible type feel for the airplane. You can fly them with the windows up, maybe in the winter with the heater on, or the windows down for that 90-mile-an-hour air conditioning you can get in cruise in an Ercoupe. So almost an open cockpit feel in this airplane. So we're actually kind of excited to get the thing flying, to have, fly on a summer day with those windows down. There's a good view of it right there. Stainless steel firewall. A lot of the metal steel fittings were corroded, but it was just surface corrosion. So we have the team right now kind of sanding and polishing and priming and painting a lot of that surface corrosion away. Fuselage is in pretty good shape. There are a few patches on there, but they were all done actually pretty well. And a couple of things we're fiddling with, and a couple of things we're leaving put. But good shot of the airplane right there. The engine mount front trunnion was a little probably messed up on a landing back in its history. So we're working right now to do some minor repairs of that to make sure it operates, as it's supposed to, as it's designed to do. But other than that, finding some corrosion and some things, but actually for the airplane, its age, it's actually in pretty good shape. I told you we peeled the wing skins off. The Army Air Corps airplanes had fabric wings. So we're going to go back to the fabric winged airplanes, and we pulled those skins off. We did find some corrosion. Unfortunately, it was down kind of in the spar bolt area, kind of the strongest part of the airplane. So Jerry and Jerry have been looking online, and we're buying new parts for those, and we'll replace those spar caps and spar fittings in the wing area with new uncorroded pieces to make sure the plane's really, really safe to fly.
Do you have any idea how many hours are on the airframe?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that question. I don't know the total, but the logbooks actually take us back to the 50s. We have the logbooks back to the early 50s. This airplane lived most of its early life in California. We show airfields of Whittier, Pico Rivera, Placenta, Fullerton, and Montclair, California. And we're guessing it probably moved back to Nebraska probably in the 70s. Probably flown a little bit, and then, like you said, it was disassembled and stored in Hastings, Nebraska since the late 80s. So California airplane. And when you buy those cars in California, they always say, oh, they're always rust-free California cars. And rust-free Ercoupe, yeah, pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah.
Just a little corrosion. Do you have to change the wings themselves to go from metal to fabric? Or no, was it the same wing that just had a different covering?
It was just the same wing, a different cover. There were probably some flanges added to actually rivet the skins on. But we plan on, and we have, we've carefully removed the wing skins for a good inspection, and then we're going to go back to the fabric covering. So we'll just fabric cover the wings with the wing skins off, and we'll go back to the original. Should make the plane lighter, and so a lighter Ercoupe will mean a better performing Ercoupe. So we're all about that. And it won't be stored outside. We have plenty of hangar space for it. So fabric wings shouldn't be a big deal for us here in Nebraska. At least we hope, because it has a really good home inside.
Good. Any paperwork that you have to go through with the FAA to change from one skin to the other?
Well, that was kind of one of the sticking points, is that we had quite a few modifications of the airplane that were approved modifications, but some of them didn't have the paper trail. And so I'm going to go on a limb here. I've talked to Jerry quite a bit about this one, but I don't think we had the proper paper trail for the wing skin modification. It appears it was done to specs, but we don't have a sign off or the STC for that actual modification to our airplane. So we may make everything happier by just going back to those fabric wings like the original had. There we go. So we've got some pieces there. There's some of the steel pieces I was telling you about. We've got a gas collocator, and we got a strut and some push rods in there. And you can see that someone spent some nice time volunteer sanding and priming and painting those back to their great condition. So those are all basically right now looking as good as new and ready to put back on the airplane. So we're very excited about that. And there's some control arm linkages there. We've got, what else? We've got some fittings there, a bell crank of some sorts. Like I said, all been primed and sanded and ready to go back on the airplane. So there's all good stuff there. And it's already, a lot of work has already been being done. Yeah. Some of the less expensive things are being done. That's a brand new piece from the Ercoupe catalog right there. That's a new tail, kind of a horizontal bulkhead there that kind of supports the T-tail. We wanted to replace that one, so that's a brand new part. Designed and certified for the airplane. So we're excited to get that thing riveted on and start working on the tail and get the tail back on the airplane.
Good. Are parts hard to find, or is this a pretty easy to be able to locate things that you need?
I would say it's kind of toward the easier side. I mean, there's still quite a bit of following for the Ercoupe.
Mhm.
I know there's a national Ercoupe club. I'm getting more and more familiar with just by their online presence. They do a big fly into Oshkosh every year, so hopefully we can join them one year with our CAF Ercoupe. That'd be kind of fun. And there's a few online firms that make new parts, and there's an availability of used parts out there too. So we really haven't run into big problems yet. I know we're looking for a few pieces, but right now, so far so good. Knock wood that we can keep getting parts for the airplane fairly easily.
Awesome.
There's a good shot of the nose wheel trunnion right there. Like I said, someone sanded, primed, and painted it, and so looking pretty new, looking ready for a reassembly.
Yeah, from what we're seeing so far, you guys are doing a great job at getting this airplane on the road to being airworthy.
Yeah, absolutely, and these were pieces that we could save. Like I said, it wasn't that badly corroded. We've got a lot of push control arms in there. As we talked about, the engineer named Fred Week back in the 30s, he's the engineer for this airplane, and he wanted to build an airplane that the common citizen could fly. And the rudder pedals were kind of confounding, I guess, to non-flyers. And so he removed the rudder pedals. And you can see a whole bunch of linkages there. And those are the linkages that kind of couple the ailerons with the rudder pedals for this airplane. So it has a few more of those push rods, but it doesn't have rudder pedals. So very, very interesting airplane. I have not flown one yet, but I'm looking to fly one here shortly. And all you've got is a brake pedal. No rudder pedals, just a brake pedal there on the floor. So, but pretty good stuff there.
It's strange as someone who's flown airplanes, flown tail draggers. When you sit in an Ercoupe, there's no place to put your feet. You just put them on the rudder pedals, right? And but you can just leave them on the floor and not worry about it. It's got the brake pedal.
Yeah,
but like you said, it's a very, very not complicated, but it was a great design to link the rudders and the ailerons, so it's always in sync. Fred was ahead of his time.
Absolutely, and I've been watching some videos, obviously, since we have this interest in the Ercoupe here at the Great Plains Wing, and when you steer the airplane on the ground, you actually steer it with the yoke, so you're actually driving it like a car, which makes me chuckle all the time. I can't wait to get used to doing that. It may take some doing, but
probably.
So here's a picture of where we found some concerning rust, but you'll see we got some new pieces there, and those are some of the spar reinforcement pieces we've got there, and right there on the actual spar itself. So spar looks good. Some of those pieces in there were corroded. We were suspect on some of the drilling of those, or re-drilling of those holes there on those spar bits. So it looks like Jerry got a bunch of new pieces, and we'll have a brand new, worry-free spar and spar attachment pieces for the Ercoupe, and that'll make all the pilots very happy, I think. Cool. Obviously, the tail is pretty cool. It's got the twin boom, or the twin vertical stabs there, and the rudders, vertical rudders that are linked to the ailerons, and that bottom piece there, that triangular piece, is actually the horizontal stab with the rudders and the stabs going on the ends there. And so, kind of iconic look of the Ercoupe definitely would be the tail. And there's the wings there on the jig we've made for it. And there's another shot of the top picture there with the holes drilled out. Those were those rusted pieces, and you can see the primer is still looking pretty good on the spar itself. So the rust was just to those attachment pieces, and so we'll get that all sorted and ready to go. And that's one of the last big things we have to do is going to be get those squared away. But you know how these projects go. There's 90% of all little things take the most time. But get the spar sorted, get the engine sorted, and get the plane back together again will actually be pretty cool. Yeah. Up and there's there's one of the pictures from the movement day. You've got the engine still attached on the exhaust, and a nice place where the wings came off the airplane there, right outboard of the landing gear. So it was still very mobile that way on the landing gear. Landing gear was in pretty good shape. Like we said, we had some minor damage to the nose gear, nose trunnion, but also shows off the compound curves of this airplane. Actually, for small, kind of airplane, it does have really nice lines, very, very nice compound curve lines.
It does. Kurt, who's watching tonight, was wondering, are you going to use period correct fabric and dope on the wings, or going with one of the more modern covering systems?
We have not decided yet.
Okay.
Jerry and Jerry had just completed a Ronca Chief, and they used a water-based Stewart system for fabric covering, and I use that same system on my Newport, and so we're very, very familiar with Stewart systems. But there'll probably be some discussion about making it period correct. So I don't think we're against that. We just haven't decided yet. But if we run into a time constraint, or maybe some sort of constraint of doing something flammable in our hangar, that Stewart system is waterproof, or is water-based and not flammable. So it'll probably be a compromise, but we're not against doing dope and canvas fabric. Not against that.
Have you decided on a paint scheme? Are you going back to the scheme that the airplane that did the JATO testing had, or something similar?
We are going to do something similar. Not a lot of color pictures, but I think the airplane is going to be either kind of that Stearman trainer blue, and the wings will probably be yellow. We'll probably use the early roundels of the Army Air Force there, like in the early 40s, and we'll probably try to make it period correct that way. The JATO test bird and a lot of the images that we have from the internet is more of kind of a polished metal look to it. So we probably put some paint on it. Polished metal is very fussy, and so we're probably going to paint it up trainer-ish with that Stearman kind of color scheme with those roundels, and we'll probably call it good like that. But that hasn't been decided yet either. We're still down the road on the actual paint scheme.
Well, good. Well, tonight we're talking about the airplane for one specific reason, and that is we want to help you get beyond where you are now with the restoration and over the finish line, as it were. So we're trying to raise some money. We're looking at trying to get about $7,000 is your goal for this. We're already at $3,800, so a little over halfway. So if you can make a donation tonight, go to the Commemorative Air Force website, click on that, look for the Ercoupe, and donate what you can, whether it's $10 or $100 or even more. That would be great. But what will the money be used for that you're raising tonight?
I mean, obviously the restoration and a lot of the bits we've already talked about. We do want to get the fuselage shot blasted, and so I think they have to use like almond shells, not to damage the aluminum, and so that'll be fairly pricey to get that done. We have to do some metal work and buy some parts. The nose gear, we talked about that one, replacing steel bits that are too far corroded, fabric covering the wings, and I think one of the bigger expenses might be finishing that engine. And then potentially the paint scheme. The paint job might be fairly pricey too. But the $7,000 will definitely get us down the road to have an airplane probably that's mostly complete. And then maybe we can do some organic painting, or maybe find a volunteer or a host here in the Midwest who can paint it for us at a discount. But all the above, all those pieces and bits to get this airplane airworthy and safe, and then out on the tour for rides. Because as you know, our ride program sustains most of our airplanes, right? So get the airplane flying in a ride program, and it will guarantee its livelihood for the foreseeable future, actually.
Very good. What about the plexiglass? Do you have plexiglass, or is that something you need to source?
We do have the front windscreen, and it is probably serviceable. I don't think we'd be against replacing that, but I think we can replace that one too. And I have seen the sliding doors. We talked about those briefly. Those pieces of plexiglass are fairly simple. It's just a simple bend that kind of bends the shape of the canopy there. And I think those are probably serviceable also, but we wouldn't be against replacing those either. But it's probably a blessing that we have the windscreen, because that would probably be very, very expensive. But I think if we have to replace those side windows, we could probably do that fairly cheaply, or maybe even organically inside the CAF hangar there.
Sure. Well, and as you mentioned, they slide down, so you can actually do, you mentioned that you actually steer it on the ground with the yoke, just like a steering wheel. You put your elbow on the window, and away you go, right?
Yeah, we're very excited about that, and you can do both, best of both worlds. So it's an open cockpit per se when you want it to be, and closed cockpit when you need it to be, maybe for the weather or for the temperature. Definitely, very excited about that.
Good. And again, we're trying to help them raise some money, about halfway, a little over halfway to their goal of $7,000. So if you can log on to the Commemorative Air Force website and look for the Ercoupe and make a donation. We would certainly appreciate that tonight. And the 12 Planes of Christmas runs through the end of the year, so there's still time to get those tax-deductible donations in before January 1st. So again, commemorativeairforce.org, and click on the 12 Planes of Christmas banner there, and it'll take you right to all the aircraft. But make sure you look for the Ercoupe tonight. What are some of the other things that the Great Plains Wing, we talked about the museum a little bit and Gunfighter, but you've got probably a couple of other things that happen during the year as well.
Absolutely. It's a busy chapter. Our wing, there in Council Bluffs. Our keystone event of the year will be our late summer flying, where we have a pancake feed and then a lunch feed. And we try to bring in CAF airplanes from the Midwest, from Oklahoma, South Dakota, those areas, and we fly them in, do some rides in those aircraft there at that time. And a great opportunity for the community to come in and show their support and their curiosity, obviously, in the history of these great old Warbirds in Council Bluffs. We have a history in our wing of restoring airplanes. Back in the 80s, we had 2 L3s that were restored by our wing. And also an L5 liaison aircraft was restored and flown by our wing. And those airplanes just we kind of lost a lot of our tail dragger pilots at one time. And so those airplanes were reassigned. And so we're excited as a wing to rebuild our fleet, so to speak, with the help of the Ercoupe and then potentially some other airplanes we're keeping an eye on. Maybe we can rebuild our fleet from 1, then 2, maybe 3 airplanes here, and keep the excitements and focus on Warbirds here in Council Bluffs. Like to have a full hangar.
Excellent. About how many members are in the Great Plains Wing?
I think we've got about 60 members right now.
Okay.
And best way to build membership in any organization is to have activity. And so we are very excited to restart our rebuild activity with the Ercoupe. And we hope it's a catalyst for more rebuilds and more airplanes and more interest and more members in the future. But there's no place like the present to restart that activity, that excitement, and that by itself should gain membership without a problem.
Yeah. Well, and in the picture of the team rolling the wingless airplane just coming into your hangar, even though you can tell it's a cold night, the smiles on their faces, it's like almost looks like they might have swiped it from somebody.
It was a nighttime raid. Yeah, we went down there and took it at night. No, it was a very, very excellent donation. And Mr. Wilhelm still has interest in his Ercoupe,
okay,
as we call it. And so he requested it. It stays in the Midwest. And after we get it all done, we hope to take Dallas up in his airplane and show him how we did the restoration and honor his his part in the heritage of this airplane. Right. And honor this airplane's link to World War II.
Oh, excellent. Again, you can help out the Great Plains Wing. Just go to commemorativeairforce.org, click the 12 Planes of Christmas link, and make a donation. Again, anything that you can do to help out the 12 Planes Wing or any of the other aircraft that are there. We've had some great response to 12 Planes of Christmas. We've increased our goal a couple of times with stretch goals. Our stretch goal currently is at $300,000, and as of about an hour ago, we're just over 261,000. So still a couple of days left. I think we will get close to that goal, and that would be absolutely fantastic. So we just appreciate everyone's support so far in the 12 Planes of Christmas. But if you haven't done so yet, you still have some time to support any of the aircraft, the Restoration Grant Fund, or especially tonight, the YO-55, otherwise known as the Ercoupe, for the Great Plains Wing. Bruce, any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
I just want to thank everyone tonight for their interest in not only the Ercoupe, but the Commemorative Air Force, and like we just talked about briefly before, but honor the service of the individuals that flew these airplanes and also the heritage of these airplanes. And keep that going forward in the future, and their donations will only help in that cause.
It certainly will. And is there a target date for getting the airplane airworthy?
Yeah, so obviously a target date for airplane and airplane maintenance are always kind of sketchy at best, but we have a very ambitious goal to have the airplane flying in 2024. Right. So hopefully at the end of this next summer, we'll have it ready to go, and we'll get the airplane into the air and get some members qualified in it and start that ride program for the future of the wing and future of the Ercoupe. Good.
Well, we'll look forward to it, and when it gets to first flight time, let us know, and we might just have to revisit the Great Plains Wing and check out the Ercoupe in its airworthy state.
Perfect. And then we'll strap the JATO bottle on it, and we'll do some rocket-assisted takeoffs.
There we go.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Again, don't forget to click that like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about future shows. One more time, please, if you can, go to commemorativeairforce.org, click on that 12 Planes of Christmas button, and help support the Ercoupe and all the airplanes that are flying here with Commemorative Air Force. As always, if you have any feedback or future topics that you'd like us to cover, send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Again, Bruce, thanks for joining us tonight, and stay warm there in Council Bluffs.
Thank you, and everybody have a good night and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. For the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Bose. We'll see you next time right here on Warbird 2.